Good evening. Welcome to WSBI, your resource for success podcast program, where you get to meet inspiring women-owned businesses from across the country. And now, for your host, Kimberly McElmore.
Hello, welcome to another night of sharing. With us we have Pastor Cynthia A. Jones, author and founder and owner of Cee-Jay Ministries, Inc. Welcome, Pastor.
Thank you.
How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. How are you?
I'm doing good. I am glad that we're finally getting this opportunity to speak. I've done my research, but I definitely want you to share your story. But before we dive into this telling the story, tell the listeners a little bit about yourself.
Okay, my name is Cynthia Jones. I am an ordained minister. I've been a pastor in the past. I'm not pastoring right now. I am an inspirational speaker, and I am the author of Destined Even Though You've Been Delayed.
All right. Okay. Well, would you like me to call, is it okay if I call you Pastor Jones, or do you like to be called Cee-Jay? What is comfortable for you during the interview?
Whichever one is comfortable for you. I go by both names, so that's fine. Cee-Jay is fine.
Okay. All right. Great. I love Cee-Jay. I think that's a really cute name, and I like the way you spelled it too. So that was pretty interesting.
Thank you.
All right. Well, what I wanted you to do is talk to me a little bit more about where you're from, and then, we'll dive into how you kind of got started into this and the story. You have a very important story that I want people to hear about, but before we get into those details, I really absolutely want to learn a little bit more about your background.
Okay, well, I live in Atlanta now, but I am originally from New Jersey, born and raised there, and I relocated to Atlanta almost 30 years ago, actually. I came here, fell in love with it, and I've been here ever since. Mm-hmm. And that's when I started growing in the ministry. I've been in church my whole life, but I started hearing the call of God on my life a good 25, close to 30 years ago now. Mm-hmm. And I started working in the church, and gradually the call got louder to do more and more things in leadership, which I'm a background person. I'm not one that likes to be out in the front. So when God called me to the front, that was kind of a new thing for me to get used to. Mm-hmm. Even today, it's something that I do, but I'm much more comfortable working in the background. And so I can take the microphone and I do what I'm supposed to do, but mm-hmm. when it's done, I have no problem giving you back that microphone, walking off the stage.
Yeah, you sound like me, because I'm the same way. Like, I was telling people I love to hide behind the mic, know. So yeah. Mm-hmm.
Some people love it. I love working in the background. I always used to say I'm good at making other people look good. Mm-hmm. That's what I do the best. And then God had other plans for me, and he called me to preach, and he called me to do some other things. And in 2001, I believe, is the year I incorporated my ministry. And my ministry was incorporated to educate leaders, and to inspire women. That's been my passion, and it still is. But because of some things that I went through physically, mm-hmm. God kind of had a detour along the way. And in the midst of all that I was doing, now I have also added inspirational speaker to what I'm doing.
Right. Okay. Yeah, but like I said, we'll kind of get into your story a little bit later, but I'm listening to you talk, and I think when we talked a few minutes ago, I said you have such a very soft voice, but I'm listening to you, and I'm listening, and that's the key here I'm trying to get to, is that people listen to what you're saying, and your tone is so pleasant that I can understand why you've been called to do what you're doing. But what is that feeling like when I hear people say that they have a calling? How do you really know, and how did you understand that calling for you to go through the process that you have gone through? Because when I went and researched your background, you went through some steps, went through several steps, to get into the ministry. You didn't actually start out that way. You were doing other things just like normal people would do. And then, well, I won't say normal people, but everyday type things that we do, as far as working and so forth. But how do you know what that calling is, and what really made you decide to push it forward?
Well, I think one of the ways that you know what your calling is, first of all, it's usually something you're passionate about. I tell people the thing that bothers you the most is what you've been called to do something about. Mm-hmm. And for me, I love order. I love things done in excellence. I don't want anything, especially if it's got my name on it, to be done halfway. I love order. So that's why I'm a great background person, because I like to bring order, especially around chaos. Mm-hmm. It's got to be order. It's got to be organized. It's got to be with a spirit of excellence. It's got to be done correctly, or don't do it at all. And the other thing, when you've been called into the ministry, that's something completely different. Mm-hmm. God will use people to do certain things. And what I was called to do 20 years ago, I'm still called to do it, but God has just changed my path a little bit. I'm still called, but the direction that I'm going is a little bit different than it was 20 years ago. But then when you think about it, I'm a lot different than I was 20 years ago. And that's so right. Are you.
That's right.
So
That's
as
right.
we grow and mature, God has a way of moving us and maneuvering things around us that we get where we belong. And sometimes once you get there, then you start hearing, this is what I want you to do. This is where I want you to go. You belong right here, and this is what I want you to do for me. And so this is the time that you have to get before God alone in prayer and seek his face to find out if you are actually hearing from God. And then once you get that confirmation, run with it, with everything you've got. So many people have told me they've been called into the ministry and they've run from it. Mm-hmm. I couldn't run from it. First of all, I wouldn't get any rest because of my relationship with God. I can't run from him because I was close to him before he called me to preach and before he called me to pastor. So my relationship with him was strong then. So I couldn't run from him. So for me, there was no real running. I accepted the call that he had on my life, and I didn't run from him. I ran to him because I realized I can't do it without him. And even with things that I do today, I run to him and I get before him and I pray and I seek his face. I do nothing without turning to him first. And that's where my power comes from.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I love how you talk about the fact that it's the passion. And I think a lot of people too miss out on their passion. You know, I have people ask me all the time, well, what made you decide to be an author? Or why did you want to get in business? It's because when you're passionate about something, like you said, that you believe in, and you know you want to help others believe in themselves and see them, soar into what they want to be, it's hard to walk away from that.
It's very hard to walk away from that.
And that is the one thing that I find that's so important about what I do. And that's the purpose of me having this podcast program, is that I love to hear the stories. And there's always someone out there who's listening that is going to connect with each one of you women that I've interviewed, because they're either struggling or they're currently going through the same thing you're going through right now, or they've been there, or they're striving to get there. So, you know, to have you guys be able to tell these stories, I think is the most important part about understanding what it means to be in business, but also what it means to understand your inner you and how to be successful within yourself versus having to worry about what the whole world is considering or what they think is right for you.
Exactly. That's exactly it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think it's, interesting. As I was reading and researching a little bit about you, you did accounting for 20 years.
Yeah.
That is a huge jump in difference. I was like, oh, that's interesting. Now it's great on the business side.
Yeah. And it was. And I did that for 20 years and I didn't mind doing it. I kind of fell into doing it.
Okay.
And to this day, I'm still great with numbers.
Mm-hmm.
But my passion wasn't in it. I'm good at it, but my
Mm-hmm.
passion isn't in it.
Right. Right.
So when I got into the ministry, and I kind of fell into that because, again, I had been in church all my life, but there were several people at different points in my life that saw things in me that I didn't see.
Mm-hmm.
And so they began to speak into me, and they began to direct my path a little bit and show me and ask me to do things. And many of those things I wasn't even comfortable doing
Mm-hmm.
because, again, my background, and people were beginning to pull me into the front. They were beginning to pull me to stand in front of people. And, that's everyone's biggest fear is to stand in front of the crowd. Yeah. So, and with me being not only a background person, but I'm an introvert. I love being by myself. I love doing my own thing and, making you look good, but I'm working by myself to make you look good. So I'm doing all the little details that you don't have time to be bothered with, or you shouldn't be bothered with. You should be focusing on what you're going to do when you get the microphone, not what's going on behind the scenes.
Right.
And that's where I like to come in. And much of that is working by yourself.
That's right.
And so people started pushing me out in the front, and I'm like, yeah, I really don't want to be here. And so, that is still a struggle. I get extremely nervous before I get up in front of people, even to this day. And I've been doing it for 20 years. And to this day, I still get nervous.
Yeah, and you sound like a pro. So, but I do understand, because even when I get ready to do these interviews and I go and do speaking, I'm sitting here and I have to breathe a few minutes before I even get started because my biggest fear is not doing it right. So
exactly.
Yeah, so I
but
definitely
that makes
understand.
You study more. That makes you prepare more. That makes you do whatever it is you have to do to become successful at what you're doing. You're not just getting up doing it because if you're anything like me, you don't feel like you're qualified. That makes you study even harder and prepare even longer. When other people are sleeping, you're figuring out a better way to do it than you did it before, or a better way to do it than it was done the last time. You're constantly focusing on becoming better. And that's what brings out the greatness in people. You may not be comfortable at it, but you're willing to work at it.
Right. Absolutely. And then one thing that I really love what you said in the very beginning, how you talked about you're very detail oriented in that when you put your name on something, it has to be right. Boy, you took the words right out of my mouth. I think I preach that 24/7. I'm like, if I'm involved in this is the way it's going to be done, or it's not going to be done right, I'm not going to do it at all. And and I think that's an important part, an important message to everybody. It doesn't matter whether you're in business or not, but I think a lot of things that I see today, people don't take things as seriously. Everybody wants to have that instant gratification, and that they're not willing to work hard at it. They think, well, this is something I'm good at, but they're not willing to put that extra time and effort into it and realize that, hey, your name is attached to this. This is your business. You're representing yourself every day.
Every single day. And for me, it's greater because I not only represent myself, I represent God.
Amen.
So
that's right.
Everything I do, first of all, I have to get his approval, and then I have to get him to show me how it is he wants it done. And I work with some family members and friends that work with me sometimes, not all the time, but when they bring it to me, it has to be excellent, or I'm either not going to do it, or I take it and do it myself. Because again, I'm representing God, and it's got my name on it, but more than that, it has his name on it.
Right.
So you can't just do anything for me, because I'll snatch it back in a second and do it myself. So, and they know that about me. My son look and say, "Oh, she's not going to go for this."
Right.
He knows, and he's happy that have said they were going to do something for me or help me do something that I may or may not know how to do. And I'll tell him, I'm like, look, I haven't heard from him. And he'll reach out and he'll say, look, if you're going to work with her, you need to reach out to her or she will find someone else, because I don't play.
That's
I
right.
will move right on. There is always someone willing to do the work.
Absolutely. And but people need to learn to respect everyone's time, and time is money, the whole 9 yards. And, like I said, it's really not always about the money, but it's just the respect. And, I kind of battle with that all the time as well. I think that as business owners, people seem to forget that we all need each other. And, if you say you're going to do something, do it. And, you're absolutely right. You shouldn't have to sit back and wait for, you shouldn't have to reach out to them if they said they're going to call. They should be calling, and they should be doing what they say they're going to do, because people are hungry out here, and there's many people who are willing to do the work for you and do it the right way.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I want to do now is I kind of want to dive more into focusing back on your experience. Now, I know you said that you're no longer ministering. You're doing more the motivational speaking, but I also want to understand. Talk to me a little bit about what happened and why you had to stop during a period of time, and talk to listeners a little bit about your story.
Okay. First of all, I'm still ministering. Okay. I'm not pastoring.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I still go out preaching. I'm still, I'm not, I don't have my own church right now any longer. Okay. I am under Bishop Quincy L. Carswell at the Covenant Church in Decatur, Georgia, and I work very hard at his ministry. Again, I'm a background person, so I serve him in whatever capacity that I possibly can. But about 18 years ago now, I got sick, and no one knew why, and I kept going in and out of the emergency room. And you know how that is. They give you an antibiotic and send you on your way. And I would take the antibiotic, and I would get better for a little while. And then maybe 5 days after the antibiotics were gone, I was sick again. I was back in the emergency room again. And this kept going on for a couple of months. And I made a decision, which probably wasn't my finest moment. I made a decision. One day I had gone to work. Then I was working in corporate America, and I had gone to work. And I had been off the antibiotics again for about 4 or 5 days, and I got sick. And what I did notice was throughout this time, anytime I went off the antibiotics, the sickness came back with a vengeance. It was like it was making up for lost time. And this last time, the time before that, I had gone to the emergency room, and I said, well, something's going on. I shouldn't have to keep taking antibiotics. I shouldn't have to keep coming and sitting in this emergency room every couple of weeks. And no one would take me seriously. So I made the decision while I was at work this particular day. I wasn't going to take any medicine. I was just going to let whatever happens happen, and then I'll go to the emergency room at my very worst. That may not have been the finest thought I've ever had, but it worked. I got to the emergency room, walked up to triage, and I leaned on the counter to try to sign in. And I don't know what I looked like this particular day, but the young lady behind the desk ran out, grabbed me, ushered me into the back, and stuck a thermometer down my throat, and my fever was 105. And so then I got everyone's attention. They're realizing, okay, something is seriously going on. And to make a long story short, I ended up being transferred to a heart hospital here in Atlanta, and I was diagnosed with having endocarditis, which simply means your heart valve is infected. So, and that's why I kept being misdiagnosed, because your heart valve is infected. The blood is pumping throughout your body. So it kept saying, you've got a kidney infection, you've got a bone infection. It was just one infection after another. But that was just a symptom of the major problem that was going on that no one diagnosed. And so I ended up being admitted to the hospital and stayed there for several months. I watched the seasons change. I went in with a cold and came out. It was summer. And I had my first surgery in June of 2000. And they did a valve repair. And I ended up having 3 valve repairs And finally, in 2007, I had a valve replacement. So all in all, I had 4 open heart surgeries. Each time the doctors basically told me to set my house in order. It wasn't looking good. But I had faith in God, and I knew that I had not done what God had called me to do. Mm-hmm. And so this was not going to be the end of my story. And I kept telling people, I will walk out of this hospital. I may not know when, but I'm going to walk out of this hospital. Mm-hmm. Didn't know I was going to keep walking back in, but I knew every time I walked in, I knew I was going to walk out.
Right.
And I did. And a few years ago, my doctor referred me to speak at a woman's luncheon, and I shared my story, and that was the first time I shared it publicly. And I shared my story, and I was overwhelmed by the love and the admiration and the shock that these people had just from hearing my story. To me, it was no big deal. It was something I had to do to survive. So I never thought about it as being inspiration to other people. I just knew I had to have this surgery in order to keep living. Right. So, but then when I started talking to the women afterwards, and I found out people were going through similar situations, it may not have been heart disease. It may have been cancer. It may have been divorce. It may have been, abuse, but whatever the situation is, when I tell my story, I inspire women, especially. I speak to men as well, but I mostly speak to women, and I inspire them that whatever your situation is, you have the strength on the inside of you to overcome it. You can turn your tragedies into triumph. You just have to make a decision. This is not the end of my story. And that's all I did. I stood on my faith, and I kept, even though I was getting negative reports in the hospital, because really that's all you get in the hospital, because if you were well, you wouldn't be in the hospital.
Right.
So it was just negativity all day long, one doctor after another, just one nurse, just negativity. And I had to learn that, okay, I hear what you're saying, but I'm walking out of here. I hear what you're saying, but this is going to turn around. I am going to walk out of here. I am going to go on with my life. I am going to do everything that God called me to do. This is not the end. They thought I was a little crazy, a few of them, but God gave me a wonderful doctor, and he believed just as well as I did, and we kind of stood together with this.
Mm-hmm. Well, at the end of the day, what it was is that you had your house in order. They told you to get in order. It was already in order.
It was already in order.
That's right. Yeah. And you believed in yourself, and the faith is what got you through all of it. And every day it continues to remind you, that you're still here, and that sharing your story is important. It is very important.
It is. It is. And I share the dangers of heart disease in women. We're coming up, on Heart Month, but Heart Month is every month.
That's right.
As women, we don't take care of ourselves. We're taking care of the husband. We're taking care of the kids. We're taking care of the job. And that's exactly what I did. I knew for quite a while something was wrong, but I kept going and going because I had responsibilities here. I had responsibilities over there. And so I don't have time to be sick. I don't have time to slow down. And so you just keep going. But it's kind of like they tell you on the airplane, you got to put on your own mask first before you can help anybody else. And I ended up at a point that I'm laying there in the hospital. I can't help anybody. So now you don't have to tell me when my body tells me go somewhere and sit down. I go somewhere and sit down. I don't care what's on the calendar, because I told them I'm not coming back to this hospital.
Yeah, and I don't blame you. I don't blame you.
I made that decision. If I'm trusting God that I'm healed, and I know there's a call of God on my life, that season of my life is over. So I trust him and I keep going. So now when something happens that's not quite right, and that's, again, I work for myself, so I can go somewhere and sit down, and I can still work, but I'm at home working. I'm making phone calls from home. not running around all over the place.
Right.
And that's one of the things women do. And we don't eat right. We grab something while we're out, if we eat it all.
Eat it all. That's right. You're right. Yep.
And that's not good. That is not good. And that's what many of our problems are. We're not eating right. We're not exercising. We're not taking care of ourselves. And we're not paying attention to our bodies when our bodies are speaking to us.
Yep. Well, and you're right, because I always have that same conversation. People constantly laugh at me when I say, "Oh yeah, I get up in the morning and I'm in the gym, before 5, and that's how I start my day." Because you learn those life lessons. You have to learn and understand and know your body. And I know my body. I know what I'm capable and what I know I'm not capable of. And you're sitting here talking about heart disease. I actually have a heart disease problem that most people don't know. And, I'm sitting here listening to your story. Mine isn't as excruciating, and I haven't had to have the surgeries, but because I've been able to, I was diagnosed with it way back in the 80s at such a young age that they've been able to monitor and keep me well. But, you have to constantly pay attention to those symptoms that you're having. Yeah. So I definitely understand. And it's amazing, just listening to you tell your story about, the struggles that you've gone through, but you faced those challenges right up front, and you decided that like you said, you had to make the decision that you were going to make it and that you were going to survive. And you knew that you could sit down one day and tell this story, because unfortunately, sometimes it takes our tragedies in order to make us come out to the forefront. And
exactly, that's what happened.
right. And it's, I mean, you and I could probably talk all night about different things we've gone through, and, some of the stuff that I've gone through, we have a lot of similarities, but it's taking those, like you said, taking that and sharing that. And I'm even learning that being behind the mic is great, but I've also learned to step out on courage and faith and say, hey, it's time to share the stories. It's time for people to understand that you're not just a shell. Because when people see you and they see us, all they see is perfection. They don't understand what you've been through. Yeah. So,
because it was a struggle on so many levels. I mean, my son was 13 when I got sick. So I had to ask my mother to come from New Jersey to come take care of him. So she had to take a leave of absence from work. They repossessed my car while I was in the hospital. I mean, but when I stand up and I share my story, people don't see that. They don't see the struggles you go through to get to where you are. And that's why I share my story. They didn't care I was in the hospital. They came and got my car. They didn't care.
Yeah, bills are going to come whether they don't want to hear your problems. They're like, nope, you got to pay these bills, right? That's right. Yeah, it's a shame. It is a shame, But even when
that's why I share that, so that people know you're not the only one this is happening to.
That's right.
That's
right.
This happens to everyday people. It happens to people that are standing on stage with a microphone. It happens to people that look like they have it all together, and it's just not always the case.
Exactly. But, your story it's amazing. And, it's a blessing to even have the opportunity to sit down and talk with you, and, when you talk to my listeners about what you've been through. But I want to talk a little bit and jump a little bit on the other side of just the business side. Talk to me a little bit about the challenges that you have been facing with business now. Like I said, you were in accounting for 20 years, and then you're out of that because you got the call into the ministry side, and you went through that process. And you've been working on your own for a long time. Talk a little bit about those challenges that you face.
It's been a challenge in a lot of different areas. As a female in ministry, that's a challenge. That Me Too movement, oh my gosh, I can raise my hand so many times. It's been a challenge as far as a financial challenge, trying to bring everything together and doing it God's way, because I can't just do it any kind of way. I've had coaches tell me, well, this is how you make money. You do this, that, and the other, and it'll bring money in. But God will not release me to do that. So I'm kind of barred from what I can and cannot do. So my situation is a little different. I know some of those other things that speakers do to bring in money. I just can't do. I have not been released to do that, nor do I believe I will ever be released to do that. So it's been a challenge for me getting my name out there. It's been a challenge for me getting the opportunity to get on stage to share my story. And because I was sick for so long, it's been a challenge even getting back up and preaching in the ministry because I have been away for so long. So the connections that I had all those years ago, many of them are gone. So I'm having to, I won't say reinvent the wheel, but in some ways start all over again.
Right.
And that has been my biggest struggle. When you've gone away for that many years and then try to come back, it's a huge struggle, and only God can open that door.
No,
and he's slowly opening the door. But that has been my greatest challenge.
Wow. But your ministry is to a much larger group of people. And that's, I think, is the most important part, is that you no longer just have that room of individuals. You have the whole world that's willing to listen. Anybody that you're standing in front of, they're willing to hear your story. And I think that's the most important part. So yeah, it's been a challenge, but like they say, Lord will shut one door and open a new one for you. And that's exactly what he's doing for you. And like you said, he's got a special path for you.
Right.
So.
Right. And that's why I just can't have, God has not sent me a coach. I've asked for one. He just hasn't sent me. I've talked to a few people and I'm like, yeah, this isn't going to work.
You two are not going to, with the way that, but then part of it is because you understand exactly what you want. And that's the difference. Cause I know I've kind of gone through the same, I'm always looking for the right person. And it's not about having a huge amount of people around you, but it's people that that you can certainly trust. They're going to work for you for the right reasons, and not to just be on the coattail. And I think that's important. And, and even though you say you're an introvert, you're a very different type of an introvert. I mean, I've seen some introverts, but you're special. Like there's something about you that I can see, I can understand, why you have to have very specific people, because you understand business to an extent that a lot of people don't, which, sometimes when you have some of those people from the outer side coming in and they say, oh, I'm going to coach you, I'm going to do this for you, you probably end up knowing more than what they do, to some degree. Yeah. So
it's been the same thing with the marketing and all of the people that want to, come in and take me to another level, I believe is the way many of them have said it.
Right.
And in fact, I got a phone call yesterday and my response was, yeah, I'm doing very well by myself. Thank you very much. And that's just what I have to say now, because the path that God has for me is not your normal cookie cutter path. The way that works for others is not the path that God wants me on. And it's not the path that will work for me. So why waste my time or yours?
That's right. That's right. And money, because, today nothing is for free. So.
Yeah, because they're calling me because they want me to hire them. So, yes.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So, okay. But on that note, if there was one thing that you could share with another woman about business, what would that be?
Don't give up. You're going to get knocked down. That's part of your success. All of us have been knocked down. All of us have failed. All of us have wondered, is this the right thing to do? But if this is your passion, this is your calling, this is what you get up in the morning to do, don't ever quit. Don't ever turn back, because then it will never get done. And you have been called to do something. You have been anointed to do something. Do it. Don't accept the excuses. Don't accept the negativity. Just get up and do it. Every day, take one step. If it's just one step, every day, do something that's going to put you closer to where you desire to be.
Amen. I'm sitting here. That was a prayer for me. Thank you very much, and for everybody else. But that, you're right. You're absolutely right. That people talk about every day what it is they want to do, and like I said, we get the same questions. Well, why are you doing this, and what made you decide to do it? You just have to get up and do what you love. And if you get up and think about that, eat, sleep, and breathe it, then you should be doing it.
Yeah, if it wakes you up at night, if you can work on it 24 hours a day without being tired, without being frustrated, that's where your heart is. Mm-hmm. And that's what you need to be. And that's what you need to do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much. So how can the listeners get a hold of you?
They can go to my website, cejministries.org. That's CEE-JAY ministries.org, or they can follow me on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram at Elder Cynthia A. Jones.
All right, great. It has been a pleasure having you on tonight. Do you have any last words?
Thank you so much for having me. I enjoyed it, and I really appreciate you giving me this opportunity.
Well, it is my pleasure. It has been an awesome night. And again, like I said, thank you for coming on tonight and sharing your story. For everyone else, enjoy the rest of your evening.
Good night, everyone. We will be back next Thursday evening at 7 p.m. Follow us on Spreaker, www.spreaker.com/user/WSBI. View our new WSBI website anytime at www.wsbillc.com and on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Instagram.